Welcome back to another episode of the podcast.
Hello.
Asha, take it away. She's not going to be on camera, so she'll just be a floating voice right now.
Hey guys. Today we're going to be doing Would You Rather questions. Ready?
Yep.
Would you rather wear pants 3 sizes too big or shoes 3 sizes too small?
Pants.
Pants. I don't think you can wear shoes that, like,
It depends on the shoe.
Yeah.
guess.
You can wear a flip-flop.
All right.
Does that change your answer at all?
No.
No.
Would you rather have every meal you eat for the rest of your life be too spicy or too sweet?
Too spicy. Already they're too spicy, but it's probably more of a problem that I have.
Every meal that I eat, too spicy or too sweet.
And I say that because I don't consider dessert a meal. That's the sweet treat. So my dessert
No,
would not
but
be
dessert would
spicy.
be part of the meal.
Part of a meal, but it is not the meal.
But
don't have dessert
some
every time
meals
you go
have
out.
Sugar in it.
You don't. What happened?
Some meals do have sugar in it.
Oh yeah. But it's not dessert.
But it could end up too sweet instead of too spicy or salty.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you go out to a restaurant and you have dinner, you have the meal of dinner, then that would include, like, appetizer, entree, dessert.
Not always.
Not always, but then if you have dessert, your dessert would also be too spicy because it'd be part of the meal.
No.
I'm gonna go with too sweet, but yeah.
Dessert's not a meal.
It is part of the meal. It's included in the meal.
Not necessarily. Because I feel like if it's included in the meal, that means you have it every time you have the meal.
No, you don't have to have it every time you have the meal.
I'm just saying this is where my mind's at.
Okay.
Next one.
Would you rather wrestle a gorilla or 2 alligators?
Go ahead, Kevin. He wants to do it all.
Wait. What was the last one?
A gorilla or 2 alligators.
2 alligators. Okay, well, that makes it different. That's a 2-on-1. No, I've never advocated for a 2-on-1 fight. Okay, that's a different thing. I have to think about this. You can give your answer while I ponder.
Do I have weapons?
Just your hands.
Just hands?
Yeah.
Hiya. How fast are alligators on land? Because I know that they can get pretty fast.
It's like 30. I think it's like 30 something miles per
my
hour or something like
goodness.
that. Like
They're
they can.
fast, but you can. Sorry to cut you off, but to outrun them, you have to run in a zigzag.
Zigzags,
Yeah.
right?
I
was
heard
trying
someone
to
say that's a
remember what
lie.
it was.
Oh,
Like-
really?
Like there was like a animal. I can't remember what it is, but like
Wrangler?
yeah, like it's not entirely true. But I will do the 2 alligators. But yes,
I was going to say maybe the 2 alligators.
yeah.
Because I feel like if you get them like right like between their eyes or like on their snout, then they're kind of like down for a bit. What? I'm serious.
The only thing I could think of is when Nick is talking about fighting like a shark. And he's like, yeah, well, if you punch a hammerhead in the head, you got a friend for life. Like, where are you going with this?
Because I think because the eyes are sensitive for everything, so just bonk an eye. You know?
All right.
Do I have to make it out of this alive? Because I feel like a gorilla just ripped me to shreds. Right, one movement.
No, I'm not gonna say it.
All right, next one.
Would you rather have a Texas? I'm so sorry. Would you rather have a Texas accent and live in New York, or a New York accent and live in Texas?
It's just the accent, right? That's the only thing.
Yeah.
I'll do the Texas accent in New York.
Yeah, I feel like that's not really all that weird.
I
I feel like you'd get a harder time having a New York accent
in Texas.
in Texas
Yeah.
Here,
than a
it's like
Texas.
no one
yeah,
cares.
everyone be like, "Oh, hey, where are you from? Texas? Okay."
Yeah,
And
but
then
they
just
didn't
keep it
say you're
moving.
from Texas. You just have an accent.
I would just tell them I'm from Texas. Well, why
So
would I
you'd
have
lie.
it? All right.
Next, I feel like here would be a lot more endearing to people. Like, oh, your accent is so cute. It's different. Like, you know, foreigners. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to do one?
Answer the question.
Oh, I would say Texas and New York.
Oh, I was asking if you wanted to do an English accent, but
Oh no.
Oh.
would you rather have to use shrimp flavored toothpaste or deodorant that smells like cheese?
The toothpaste one.
I guess toothpaste. I don't want to smell like cheese.
You said it tastes like shrimp.
Shrimp flavored, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I
you
mean,
still
I
have
could just- I could just
mouthwash. Like
have
you
a-
still
yeah,
have
exactly.
mouthwash.
No mouthwash.
That's part of my routine.
That's just
I brush,
bad
I
dental
floss,
hygiene
and then I
then.
They
mouthwash.
said just the toothpaste. Because if you do mouthwash, then it makes it like, okay.
I mean, I could chew a piece of gum throughout the day.
Exactly. Buy some mints or something, some icebreakers. But if you gotta smell like cheese and like it's 90-degree New York weather, nah. That's
Disgust.
horrible.
Imagine on the subway.
I don't want to. I don't want to imagine that. I really don't.
Would you rather eat all your food with your hands or use utensils with only your non-dominant hand?
Hands.
I eat many of my foods with my hand as it is. I'll do non-dominant though.
I'll do hands. Less dishes.
Yeah, but messy.
How messy?
But also, how much work is it to wash a fork?
Listen, this isn't about
You have a
Judging
dishwasher
me.
too. How many times have you
my dish.
actively
Like
done
I
dishes?
swear, my dishwasher does not like washing utensils. Like it. Like there's always one that comes back dirty and it annoys me. I don't know why.
Okay. But yeah, I'll do non-dominant. Could you imagine though? Hold on. Can you picture this? You're on a date, first date, and you're like using your non-dominant hand for the first time.
Hold on, I may need to change my answer because I didn't think this through all the way.
Oh yeah,
I didn't think
exactly.
this one- I didn't think this one
But
through
that
all the way.
was the
Hold
first-
on.
that was like one of
hold
the first
on.
things
Hold
I
on.
thought
But
about.
then what if you're having noodles on a first date?
Exactly.
If you're having what?
Noodles.
Yeah, noodles on a first date.
Could you ramen?
That's easy to eat with your hands. Are you kidding me? Slurp a little bit out and just that's nothing. See, if you have to eat that with your hands, it's not like it's impossible to eat with your
Yeah,
hands.
nothing is impossible to eat with
right.
your hand.
It's not like it can't be done. It's just gonna look really bad.
Yeah.
But then also trying to eat ramen with your non-dominant hand.
I feel like at a certain point you like learn.
That's all. Thank you.
Oh, that's all?
Yeah.
All right, Kevin, take it away.
All right, so Joseph. So last episode we spoke about Joseph and this idea of there being purpose in life, even though we may not be able to see what the purpose is as we go through situations. To this episode, we want to focus more in on this idea of legacy. when it comes to us specifically as believers, have you ever thought of what kind of legacy you want to leave behind?
Yes.
Do you care to share what that legacy is?
I feel like I would want to leave behind a legacy of like warmth.
Okay.
Like, you know, like not necessarily a specific thing, but like a feeling.
Okay.
If that, like when people think of me, like after I'm, you know, they'd be like, she was always very like warm. And I know it may not always seem like that, but that's just.
I was trying so hard to not make any jokes about it too.
I think, okay, here's the thing though. My humor with my friends is very mean. But overall, I think it's fair to say that I am a very warm, nice person. And if you disagree, you're not my friend. So,
And that's how you leave a legacy of warmth.
yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. So when we look at the life of Joseph, I'm just gonna keep moving
Look,
forward.
even my
on this.
socks have little smileys on them. Like, that's how, like, welcoming and joyous and warm I am. Even down to my socks. Crazy.
So, when we look at the life of Joseph and the end of our conversation from the last episode kind of springboards us into this, right? You see that Joseph leaves this legacy of faith, right? Because you'll see that his faith sustains him when he's rejected by his brothers, he's falsely accused, he's thrown in prison, he's separated from his family for multiple decades. He's then put in a position of power. He interprets the dreams. He eventually forgives his brothers. He doesn't retaliate against his brothers when he's given the opportunity. And he even ends up reuniting with his family. All this time, you see Joseph is just building this legacy of faith in God, right? What kind of legacy of faith would you want to leave for your family?
Well, I think it also goes back to that concept or the notion of warmth, right? Because like when you think of the warmth, you think of like love, right? Or like caring for the person. And I feel like the root of that for me is God's love for me, right? Or the experience the love that I have experienced from God. So I would want to leave a legacy of that kind of, like having so much faith in God that his love just like kind of, you know, through you.
So with that, what is faith?
Faith is believing in things that you have not yet seen.
Okay. Do you know where the extremely popular verse is from? On faith?
You're going to tell me.
Well, I was going to ask you, see if you know it first.
I don't think so. You might say it and then it'll
Hebrews
trigger it in my
11:1?
brain. Ah, I did know. I did not know.
That's not the right
But that
translation.
seems very familiar.
Well, this is NLT. Faith
Okay.
shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. The more popular thing is now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen.
Yeah.
Right? So this really does sum up a lot of Joseph's life, right? Because a lot of his life is trusting in God, not knowing what's going to happen next, right? As we started to talk about last episode, he gets this dream, probably doesn't know exactly the details of the dream and what it's going to entail, but yet we just see he keeps trusting in God. So with that, right? I think the main thing we see from Joseph's legacy of faith is that when you don't waver in your trust in God, it shows that it is worth it to endure these trials that God brings us through. Right? Now, are there ways that we could, I guess, practice the type of faith Joseph has in our own lives and just being more consistent with it?
I think there's definitely ways we can practice it. I think there's, like with most things, you have to be very intentional about it. Because if Joseph wanted, he could have turned his back to God, right? It wouldn't have been like unexpected if he did, in terms of like he's gone through all these hardships and therefore he has this resentment towards God. Like that wouldn't be like completely out of the blue. But I think it's the fact that he remained faithful and he practiced it even when he couldn't see like his way out of the tunnel. But he knew that he wasn't getting deeper in the tunnel. Kind of. So like when he was in prison, right? He and the baker and the cupbearer forgot about him. It could have been like he could have turned and like rebelled, but he remained faithful to God and kind of like worked his way up through the rank of the prisoners, I guess.
So, yeah, I think even when you look, so in Genesis 50, you'll see the death of Joseph, right? Before Joseph's death is recorded, right? We see Jacob, his father's death happens, right? When that happens, and this is around verses, I think 15 to 23, right? When he passes away, right? Joseph's brother, and I think we've kind of circled this part of the story a lot in the last few episodes, right? Where Joseph's brothers go, oh, our father is dead. Joseph has no reason to not retaliate against us, right? I think the exact thing in verse 15, they said, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him, right? So now one more time now, they lied to Joseph in verse 16, and they go, your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you're to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of God, of your father. Right?
Of the God of your father.
Yes, the God of your father. We spoke, and you were making the point in the last episode, right? Joseph was such a man of character that as we read the story, you kind of know Joseph isn't going to retaliate, right? And why do you think when someone does something wrong to you, it can often be so difficult to let go of that grudge, that desire to get back, right? Like, why is it that we just have that difficulty sometimes?
I think it's in that sinful human nature where it's like, you've hurt me, so now I have to hurt you and make it worse, right? Because your punishment for hurting me is to hurt, like, is for you to now hurt. And so that's why I think that a lot of times we end up in these falling outs. The fear is of retaliation a lot of times. And I think sometimes, though, I've seen a lot of circumstances where someone has done something bad to a person and the other person didn't retaliate, but that also kind of fueled the other person's like anger towards that person. Does that make sense? So I don't know. That doesn't have anything to do with the situation.
Well-
It was just a observation I made over the course of my life.
So I've met people who are proud that they hold grudges, right? And I know this wasn't for this episode, but when we talk about red flags, right? And she's like, yeah, no, I've held a grudge against this guy for like 3 years. I'm like, why are you proud of that, right? Then I've also met people who do the exact thing that you described, right? When you don't retaliate, they're like, oh, well, why aren't you retaliating, right? And for some people, I do think part of it, I think there's two sides to the why don't you retaliate, like against me, like I did you wrong, you should get back. I think part of it is, I think for them, it is easier for them to come to terms that they did something wrong when someone has now then wronged them, right? Even if it's after the fact, right? If you punch me, right, and then I punch you back, it's like, oh, okay, well, it's not as bad because now
You hit me too.
I got some get back on it, right? When you take that away from them, right, and it's like, oh, I hit them and they did nothing back, that can eat away at them more because they know they've done something
That's what I'm
wrong.
saying. Like that kind of
It's guilt.
the word?
It's
Yeah.
it's guilt, because they know better and then they just, you know, I think it's guilt, and then on a certain level, it's also, oh, this person. I don't want to say it's that they're better than me. It's that,
I think it's a maturity thing.
yes, it's more of a, oh, they actually know this is wrong and they're not going to do it just to appease something in the moment.
I think it's a maturity thing, but it's also a self-control thing. Because if I were to act on every emotion and every urge that I had, I don't know who I'd be, right? Because there have been instances like there was a situation like years ago, and not with me, but I wasn't part of the situation, but I knew of the situation.
Okay.
Right? And so the person was telling me what's happening. I was like, why aren't you doing anything about it? Like, why aren't you like retaliate? Like, do something about it. Like, again, this was years ago. And they were like,
Legacy of warmth.
we have grown. Because, okay, also with this is like, don't just stand there and let someone do this to you, right? Like, defend yourself. And they were like, yeah, but the energy I'm going to put into defending myself, I could put somewhere else, right? Like, I know that I'm right in this situation, and I know that they're wrong, and they're doing all these things that are wrong. So I'm not, like, I have no need to share my side of the story because I know what it is. It's between me and God, and like, we know what it is. And I was like, you know what, you're right, but, you know? It's like I said, it's like that sinful human nature where it's like, I want to retaliate. Like, I want to do
So-
something to you now.
Part of me even wonders, is that sinful in the idea of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth kind of thing? Because really, that to me, that's like the earliest version of this, right? Is you did something wrong to me, so I should then be allowed to do something equally wrong to you.
I consider it sinful behavior because it's like, it's not of God.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yes. So I remember there was a situation where someone did something to me, and I was really upset with. I was upset with what they did, but I was more so upset with the way I responded, because when I realized what they had done, part of me was just like, how do I get them back? Right? Like, for like a while, that was the only thing I could think about. How do I get this person back? Because they really hurt me. They really like did me wrong. How do I get them back? Right? And I remember it was someone else who like really had to speak to me, kind of like calm me down and be like, you doing or me doing anything back to this person, right? Trying to get revenge, retaliate, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't really, it just makes me a bad person, right? That was like the gist of the conversation. And they said some other things I'm not gonna repeat, but it was you hurting this person because they hurt you doesn't alleviate your pain,
Yeah.
right?
It kind of just brings you down to where they are.
Well, if someone stabs me and I stab them back, we're just both stabbed. Like, it doesn't stop the bleeding on my end, right? I still need to address
Yeah.
the wound, right?
Yeah.
So the point the person was trying to make me was like, all right, you're hurting. You need to seek some type of healing, right? You need to seek, like, you need to take care of what you're feeling, right? Going after this person to make them hurt too doesn't help you get better, right? And I think with Joseph, you see that because when he gets the message that the brothers send him that of what Jacob says, right? It says that when their message came to him, Joseph wept, right? Now in verse 18, it says they threw themselves down before him and they said, "We're your slaves." And Joseph says that, wow. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke to them kindly. Yeah. So again, we see this legacy that Joseph has of, okay, if I'm going to hold my faith in God, if I'm going to create this legacy of warmth, right, how then do I respond in this situation, right? Because Joseph's legacy of faith was built back when he got thrown into the pit. It wasn't built when he got elevated in Pharaoh's house, right? I would even say his legacy was built when he gets the dreams, because for some reason God saw something or chose him as a person that could be trusted with dreams and interpretation of dreams, right? So the legacy of faith, this ability to have this faith in God with Joseph is built decades before he meets his brothers, right? So I think that's a really important thing, that legacy isn't just built overnight. When we often talk about legacy, we're often talking about someone who is older or is, creeping on death's door. Like, they're at that stage of life, but yet legacy is something that gets built so much earlier in life. I remember my dad talking about his pastor when he was growing up, right? And the legacy that pastor left for like him and the guys that he grew up with, because that pastor had this very strong sense of prayer, right? And for those of you that know my dad, you'll see he's very much the same way. Like, all right, we're going to pray. We're going to do this. There's a very strong emphasis on prayer. Why? Because he met someone who created this legacy of prayer, right? And how important it is to pray, right? And even when I look at how my dad will like prep for a sermon, whether he's here or when if he goes overseas or something, the way he preps is typically the same way, or at least like the day of. It's this whole thing, all right, I am going to kind of go by myself for a few hours and pray and thing and just spend time with God, right? And he gets that from his pastor, because that's what his pastor would do, right? And you see this legacy that gets created. How important is it for us to be intentional about the legacy we're creating now?
Oh, I think it's very important. I think a lot of people, like you said, don't think about it until it's too late. But I think it's very important to think about not just the legacy that you leave, but the life that you lead. Because in that, you will find your legacy, right? So in being very intentional about the way that I live my life, I can then look back and be like, okay, there's this pattern of this legacy that I will be leaving that people will remember me for. But if you're not intentional about the things that you're doing and like, the way that you live your life, then you'll kind of just be all over the place sometimes.
Yeah, I definitely think that when, again, looking at, all right, there's purpose for everything that happens, right? Like we spoke about last episode, right? Then when we remain faithful to God, right, we may not see how our legacy is getting built and what other people are taking from it, but then we will understand that, hey, at some point, there are people who are coming up after us who are looking at us and looking at what we're doing and how we're doing things.
That was something I had to like really come to terms with when I was like teaching the kids and like downstairs with them all the time. Because you don't realize it, but like when you're with someone that consistently, like you pick up on things, they pick up on things, and like you really start to like see.
Yeah. I've been doing some other stuff where like I've been around kids a lot more, and it's really interesting seeing how quickly they pick up on certain things. Like one of them, there's something that she says, and the whole group of us were like, we even asked her mom, like, where is she getting this from? And she was like, oh, it's probably one of you guys. We're like, no, none of us say that. Like, who is saying this to her? Because we're like, where is she? And because it's like the funniest thing, right? But we're like, who said that, right? And then there's other times because like one of the guys, can say some things that we're not going to say in church, right? And he'll just like let certain words fly, even if there's like little kids around. He's like, no, if she was copying what I was saying, she'd be like
Cussing.
saying some other words, right? And it's just interesting to see, okay, what is the legacy you're leaving for people, right? What is the impression you're leaving them with? That one moment that you may touch their life, right? And again, using this example, right? You said that warmth, right? That warmth that comes from knowing God, right? That, do they get that when they meet you, right? These are the things that we should be able to think about even when we're not about to die or things like that, right? Because it is important that for us as believers, how do we interact with people? What is the impression we're leaving with them? Because I know growing up, there were a lot of people, well, let me not say a lot. There were some people in church I remember growing up with, I was like, oh, this is not the type of person I want to be, right? Because they just carried themselves in such a poor way when it comes to what it means to be a Christian. I was like, this isn't what I want to be, right? But that was the legacy they left. And
at least for that time period.
Well, and
that was the legacy they left with you. Because I'm not trying to discredit it or anything, but like a lot of times people do grow and change, right?
Yeah.
So that's the impression that they left on you, but that's not to say that that's like the outstanding legacy that they're leaving for the world.
Well, so to finish the story there, right? There's a lot of people like, and this can happen in church, this can happen in like your office, your school, whatever, right? When like this person leaves, all of a sudden everyone's like, it was almost like people gave like a sigh of relief because of the impression this person had on everyone, right? And then you watch, and then, you know, because of social media, it is easy to kind of know where people are now without having to like meet and talk with them. And you see where they are now and you're like, oh, there was no growth, right? You're doing the same kind of,
Do I know this person?
like sleazy things, right, that you were doing before, right? But that becomes right? And at the same time, right, though technically you know this person, right, you may not have been close enough with this person, right,
Yeah.
to have experienced some of these things.
Yeah.
Right? Which is the other thing, right? So that's why, you know, we should be careful of, or not careful, we should be mindful and purposeful with how we interact with people, how we talk with people. Okay, so Genesis chapter 50, verses 22 to 26 says, Joseph stayed in Egypt along with his father's family. He lived 110 years and saw the third generation of Ephraim's children, and also the children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were
Placed at
also the children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were placed at birth on Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of the land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath and said, God will surely come to your aid, but then you must carry my bones up from this place. And then Joseph died. Even, again, talking about legacy, even at the end of Joseph's life now, right, I feel his instructions to his family, right, and they probably have been there long enough where there's multiple generations there, right? Because if it's, so the third generation of his youngest son, that's, you know, how many years is that? Then look at all the other 11 brothers he has.
Well, it said
right?
he was 110. He died at 110.
Right. No, I'm just thinking about how many people were there from like Israelites in Egypt at that point, right? You're realistically, I'm thinking you're at, you know, close to like 100 people or something, right? His like last words are a summary of his life. God is going to come and aid you, right? Just wait on him, right? Verse 24, but God will surely come to your aid, right? And take you to the land he promised, right? Verse 25, God will surely come to your aid, right? And he has them swear an oath that they understand God is going to come to your aid. And when he does, just, you know, bring, you know, my body back or whatever. But it's interesting that his last words are, God is going to come.
Yep.
God is going to aid you, right? And he's able to say that because of what he's seen God do in his life, right? Are there things in your life, right, where when you look back on it, you can say, okay, God has kept his promise to me, right? Or let me reword that better. When looking back at the promises God has kept to you, right? How does that help you look towards the future?
It's one of those things where if you didn't have faith before, you have faith after. So it kind of helps to strengthen that bond in that relationship and that like foundation of faith in God, right? Because he has been faithful and he has kept those promises. So therefore, he's done it before, he'll do it again, right? You just kind of have to remain faithful to him and remain like abiding in who God is.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I think just the last thing I would say was I know that there's been situations in my life when I look towards, okay, what's about to happen in my life, I think like my first response to it was worry and like being anxious about it. And then as I prayed and go, oh, wait, you know what though? Look at what God has done, right? Look at how he's kept me through these situations. Look at the promises he's kept when I probably wasn't the best Christian that maybe deserved him keeping those promises, yet he kept the promises towards me, right? Maybe he kept them because my parents prayed for me or whatever the case is. God was faithful to me, right? So if I can remain faithful to him, I shouldn't really worry about this situation. He'll bring me through it. The end. I got nothing else.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.